version of the ACE webinar. If y'all remember, just 2 weeks ago or so, we had all that snow. So thanks one to our presenters, and then thanks everybody for jumping on. As some of you know, I'm Joe Williams. I'm the program chair, but no real announcements or anything tonight. We will have our regular scheduled session this Thursday. But from there, I'll let y'all take it away. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Michael, and I am also on the program team, and I helped set this up. I knew about some stuff happening in my office, Chioco Design. So I spoke with Christy over here, who is about to introduce everybody, and got the team together so you could learn about this really cool project. So Christy, I guess I will send it to you.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone out there in the world. I'm really excited to introduce you to just a few of the super crucial members of the team on a really, really exciting building that we've been working on. This project's been in our office for 3 years, I think. And we've just broken ground recently, so we're starting construction. I am going to share my screen. So I'm gonna zone out for just a second. We have the benefit on this project of having a website. So if you go to 1515 CesarChavez.com, you can take a look at the broker's website. So this is kind of the marketing assets, and I thought it'd be nice to start here because it's a really quick and easy way to familiarize yourself with this project. They have all the pretty rendered floor plans, and I'll just let y'all look at some of the pretty pictures of the building before I actually get into introducing the team and talking a little bit about the project and how it started up. But so it's 70,000 square feet of, you know, kind of class A high-end office space in East Austin on CesarChavez. Here are one of my favorite things is some web-based 360 views. So when they load, can everybody see this? Yeah, you can kind of look around. This is the central courtyard of the building. This is CesarChavez. This is, what is this called? Eastside Tavern, that restaurant right on CesarChavez and Comal. And you can kind of click through. We have a central outdoor kind of atrium. And this is a 3-story green wall. There's some music too. And then the stair and the elevator both go down into 2.5 levels of underground parking garage. So this is a fun site to kind of click around, get familiar with the space. You can see inside, these are sort of test fits, right? This is all shell office buildings, so very little interiors scope. It's for future tenants to move into. But these are concepts of what it could look like. And I'll take you up on the 3rd floor terrace. This project is big on outdoor terrace space. A lot of the circulation is outdoor, and that's how you kind of move through the building. And you can see this like giant 3-story green wall with planters, and it's lit up at night, and it'll always have water falling down it. So you'll be able to hear it and see it, and it's this kind of natural relief in the middle of a building. All right, let me pull up the slideshow. So here's one of the renderings from the corner. This is 1515 CesarChavez. And it's really hard to overstate how many people are involved in a project like this. At this point, our team is dozens of people, many of whom have been on this project for years. And like I said, we're only now starting construction. So, but what we wanted to get across with the design is at the ground floor, Here on the first level, there's a lot of retail, restaurant on the corner. It's a very active space. The courtyard that we were just looking around in is here at the center. The building gets pushed in. And so there's a little bit of a creation of a public space in this central courtyard in the middle of a building that otherwise would be super, super long. And then the second floor and the third floor are different in materiality and in scale, but they're both office. So they're going to be taken up by office users down the road. And it's all in pre-leasing now. So when I tell you that there is a team that helped to execute this project, this is like not an exhaustive list. One party I can already remember that I forgot about are the brokers, the commercial realtors that put together that great website that we were just looking at. But of course, there's the owner, there's the developer, the person who had the vision, put these pieces of property together and came to us and said, what can we do with this space? And that's kind of what we'll talk about a little bit. We are the design architect on this project. So we have the benefit of actually having brought on an architect of record eventually. Michael and I work for a firm that is a boutique design firm, and this would be a project that could potentially take over a smaller firm like ours. I mean, we're a design studio. We like to do restaurants and, you know, fun stuff like that. And so we love doing a project of this scale, but we needed the kind of bandwidth and expertise of a larger architecture firm that had done bigger projects like this before. Civil engineer, I'm sure y'all are learning all of this, but they oversee all of the site components, utilities, plumbing tie-ins with main lines, you know, all the kind of rough grading of making sure a site drains properly. And then our MEP engineer, that's mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. Usually all three of those trades, the engineering is wrapped into one clever firm. And here I think we brought on one of the best firms that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And you'll get to hear from Will, who works with that firm. Same with structural engineer. I mean, this is a concrete building. And so we really pushed the spans. We really pushed the depths. We have really beautiful concrete slabs that are expressed in the design of this building. So we had a solid structural engineer to help with all of that. Branding and graphics, right? Like this getting executed across every component of the building in some way or another. That was another team. Our architect of record brought on a waterproofing consultant to make sure that all the flashing details were correct and the water was the building was gonna be watertight. We have a lot of terraces. So they're called wet over dry spaces. And so when you have outdoor spaces that are on top of indoor spaces, your waterproofing consultant is really, really important. Also, a phenomenal general contractor that you're gonna meet today. Kevin and STRUCTURA have been on board almost since the jump. They've been providing like pricing exercises. They've been, you know, slapping our hands when we get too fancy with a certain material. Any of those kinds of things, they've really been just instrumental along the way. We had a parking garage consultant. We had someone handle the permitting down at the city. We had the best landscape architect in the city, DWG, and Barbara, who you'll meet in a little bit. She's been on the project almost since the beginning. Signage and Wayfinding, we have them on board. Again, Ion Art. So how are we going to fabricate all of this beautiful signage in the building? And then interior designer, which again is our studio. We take on most of the interior design. So of this broad team, and which is still not inclusive of everybody that's involved in one building, these are the four that we'll show y'all today. So design architect, me, MEP engineer, general contractor, landscape architect. And I got fancy with my PowerPoint, so give me a moment. This is Will, your MEP engineer, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. We've got Kevin, who is your general contractor with STRUCTURA, and Barbara, who is landscape architect, DWG. And so I'll kick it off by just talking a little bit about kind of the formative pieces of the project, how we sort of gave it shape. And I'm just going to talk really quickly because honestly, everybody else's part's super interesting. And you can always look through kind of renderings of the building to get to the design. But if you're familiar with this part of town, Eastside Tavern's here. Bufalina used to be here with their phenomenal pizza. Don't worry, they're moving just down the street. So we took over kind of this old Bufalina building. There's a really abandoned car wash right here. And then a house that actually got moved and donated off of this site, kind of an old pier and beam house that's now somebody's home somewhere else. But if you take a look at this property, it really is, it's in the Holly neighborhood. And what you should notice is that there's a bunch of houses around it. So single family homes, which in the city of Austin, because of zoning, they have a big impact on what you can and can't get away with. You cannot just build a high rise of office buildings right next to a house. And that's why this is, in terms of scale, is not a very tall building. I mean, it's really 2.5 stories technically. And so this is the site plan. You'll see this is kind of laying out the utilities that come in. All of these dashed lines with letters on them indicate different kind of overhead utilities or plumbing utilities. This is just the ground floor. Again, we have 2 levels of parking below us and 3 levels of building above. But just to give you a couple of pointers on the things that shaped the form of the building, we put together 5 small lots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the one that had the house on it that we moved. There's an alley behind us, just a real small like residential alley. And then there's homes. These are people's backyards right behind us. Pretty deep lots, but still people's homes are in them. So we combined those lots. Also, we have underground parking, and this is a narrow site for what you really need. I mean, you've been in a parking garage, you have to have a certain amount of width to make a parking garage make sense. You have to have the drive aisle and 2 rows of parking stalls on either side. And so what this yellow box represents is how far we had to go underground. And then we had to have license agreements that allowed us to cross over our property line to build these retaining walls so that we could dig down into the earth. And then this kind of rainbow pattern is just indicative of the other uses, particularly residential, that are around us, that kind of surround us. They have an impact on the actual built form. So in this red zone, you cannot build anything above ground, nothing at all. And so if you take a look, our building's right up against that line. And in this orange zone, you can only go a certain height. And then the yellow zone, you can only go a certain height. And it kind of steps up a little bit. And our building responds to that. So this 3rd floor that you see here, it actually doesn't go all the way back on the building because it would be getting too close to the houses behind us. But MEP, you know, all of these trades, structural, even when a developer comes to us and says, what can we do with this building? We're calling all of our consultant buddies before they're even signed up. You know, I'm already on the phone with, you know, APTUS, our MEP and our future MEP engineers saying, hey, I need to put a transformer on this site. What are the rules? Like, is this okay? Do you think this location will work? And I'm already calling landscape and asking, like, how are we going to organize the street trees that we want to plant up against the, you know, up against the sidewalk? What are the rules there? Because trust me, there are rules for all of it. And we know we want to do this kind of central courtyard with a big planter and a big tall wall. Like, how do you make it, you know, I need your help making me not sound crazy when we're pitching this to the client. Is this a thing? Can we pull this off? And so those relationships start really early on by just kind of reaching out to the people that you have established trust with. And so with that, I'm going to start off our MEP engineer. This is Will with APTUS Engineering. He graduated from Texas A&M. He has a BS in mechanical engineering. He is licensed. He's a licensed professional engineer in Texas. He specializes in mechanical and plumbing engineering for commercial projects. He has 12 years of experience across 3 companies of all different sizes, and he co-founded APTUS Engineering in 2014. Will Rhodes.
Yeah, thanks, Christy. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks to you guys for being on this evening. It's a pretty cool opportunity for us to kind of share with you what we do on a day-to-day basis. Kind of what I'm excited to talk to you guys about is kind of what we do as a part of these projects. So, Christy's going through and kind of was able to show you kind of the form of the building. And as we go through here, we'll kind of get to show you what our part of that involvement is and how it's usually the parts you don't expect to see or you don't see at all. So what do we do exactly? So it's kind of a weird combination. You have mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And what it ends up really being is all the guts to the building that usually you either don't see or you take for granted, right? Maybe the recent ice storm makes you not take water for granted so much, for example, or power. But these are things that when you have them, you don't really miss them until you don't have them anymore. And so our entire job is to make sure that when you get into this building and you can see where you're going, everything looks the way you want, you feel comfortable, and all the water and toilets work. So from a mechanical standpoint, the main thing here, looking at this rendering, is we're taking care of all the air conditioning in the building. And, those are up on the roof, and they're not something you're going to be able to see from the ground. It's something that's kind of hidden. The electrical engineering part of it, that's going to be powering all the light fixtures, all the decorative lighting outside and inside. If you have restaurants, if you have cafes, they're all going to have very specific needs for electricity. And then the plumbing. So, like we talked about, making sure the water's working, you have enough water, you have enough gas, and this particular project doesn't have medical gas, but that's some other stuff that plumbing does if you're looking at more of a medical type building. So HVAC, kind of the first part of it, Christy mentions kind of the form of the building, and in this particular case, there's restrictions that keep them from being able to build a certain height or a certain location. And similar to that, we kind of get this first round of blueprint from Christy, and our job is to really make it work with what's there and be able to kind of inform them as to what's not technically possible. So we're not architects, we're engineers by degree. And so we're looking at things very mathematically and kind of by the book. And we need to be able to work with someone like Christy and Chioco, who has a vision for what this is going to look like and how this needs to be in real life. And so we're trying to fit kind of our technology in for example, in the air conditioning on this building. And so in this case, we kind of chose the roof kind of backed away from CesarChavez, so you're not going to see it, but it's there. They're not exactly the most beautiful looking things. There's an example on the screen. They come in gray and gray. So, there's not, it's not really what every architect wants to see. But the main deal here is that we're kind of strategically running ductwork. We're strategically putting equipment in a project that kind of really holistically fits with everybody's goals. And on the electrical side, this is kind of a blow up showing, based on the rendering, what are we really involved in? And so helping with lighting. So lighting's a huge deal in a project, right? Yeah, whether it's the lighting on the balconies or in the office spaces or in the restaurants, like I was talking about before. All of that is really important too. A lot of what we do on our side has a lot to do with sustainability and being conscious of how much energy is used in a building. Commercial buildings use a large portion of the energy used in the States, actually. And so it's very important that the way we design things has a sustainable effect in terms of how much power we're using and if we're using the newest technology and staying current on the way we do things. So example of this is there's a small blow up on the left, which is our floor plan, but we're just calling out, like how many fixtures go on a particular electrical circuit, the type of controls, the zoning in the system. So we're looking to make sure that, whether it's during the day or at night or at different times of the day, that the building looks the way we want it to look. And that's a lot of coordination with Christy's team. Also power, like we talked about, for restaurants and offices. If a pizza place wants to come in, we need to make sure the building is set up for that. And also, we'll get into landscape later, but power for landscape features, if they're going to have any water features or even lighting for some landscape elements, that's very important as well. And so we take care of all that, making sure that's prepared ahead of time before it gets built. And the last part for us is the plumbing side of it. And we kind of talked about that a little bit, but you go into any restroom, whether it's at the airport or a restaurant, everything is very particularly laid out in terms of, the type of fixture used based on the use. So, our responsibility is making sure that the faucet and the sink bowl and the toilet and everything that you either take for granted, maybe the toilet, or you look at and you're like, oh, that looks pretty cool, kind of the way that the sinks are done. That's all thought through with Christy's team and with us as well. So their job is to pick the element that they want to look like, and ours is to make sure that it'll functionally work. And so we pipe it all together and we design it so that a plumber can come in and install all these things. And we're basically just producing blueprints for them to go in and hook up the pipe. So we tell them exactly how big it needs to be and where it needs to go. So we bring those utilities, like the main water that from the city service into the building, and hook them up to things like, water features, showers, and the restrooms. And on this particular project, and something that's become more common in our design now is, again, from a sustainable standpoint, trying to collect rainwater, trying to collect the water that comes out of the AC equipment in the summers and reuse that for something. So to come up with a creative way to be less wasteful with some of our uses, and tie that into a building element. And so that's a unique challenge for us when, we get a project that's, okay, well, it's going to be 2.5 stories and here's where it's going to be. But, we need to make this rainwater system work. We need to make this AC system work. So that's where we get pretty excited, is because a project like this is a unique challenge, and it allows us to kind of use our brain power and figure out how to get to the end.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things that y'all pulled off we were all set to start construction about a year ago, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And Will and his team responded super quickly with revisions to the mechanical, particularly the mechanical systems, the AC units, to make sure that they had proper filtration, upgraded filtration. All the plumbing fixtures are now touchless controls, all the things that you would want to see in a post-COVID office building. Yeah.
So to like Christy's point, this profession constantly evolves. So in March of last year, I never thought I would read so much like medical research and articles than I ever have in my career before. But just based on publications of, like something like the coronavirus, what you have to do to a building, and to be a part of kind of the leading edge of that is a part of, my job. And so, yeah, luckily we were able to find solutions for this building to where, we're going to build them into the project to lower the risk of not just the coronavirus, but anything in the future. And you're constantly, trying to digest the latest research and then implement that into your project. So that's a good point. That's something exciting that I like to do as well.
Yeah, you got real popular all of a sudden.
All of a sudden, yeah.
System.
Usually not popular, but all of a sudden. So.
Thank you. Gosh, Kevin Jones of STRUCTURA. He is our general contractor and is overseeing construction. He is also the co-founder of STRUCTURA and oversees operations. He has almost 30 years of construction industry. Kevin, since you were 12, I'm guessing you've been in construction. Is that the math?
12 years old.
And he is known for completing coordination-intensive projects on an accelerated schedule. Kevin focuses the team on a zero punch list completion. I'm gonna hold you to that. And is able to accomplish this because of his driving collaborative approach with subcontractors, owners, architects, engineers, and city officials. His team building abilities are exemplary. He coordinates large project teams by keeping everyone on track with open communication and the committed belief that only results count. Thank you, Kevin.
Wow. I didn't know you were going to say all those nice things, Christy. Thank you. First of all, I'm very excited to be here, and it's really cool to see so much participation in the ACE Mentor program. I think it's awesome that you guys are interested in architecture, construction, and engineering. So I'm excited to be here tonight and present. So we are STRUCTURA, that we're a general contractor, and our job is, after Christy's team and that whole list of consultants and involvement gets finished with their set of drawings, we have to go make it a reality and build it. And so as the general contractor, we will hire a bunch of specialty contractors, subcontractors, to put the project together. And one unique thing about our company is that we have in-house about 50 craft level people. So we self-perform concrete as well as drywall framing and sheetrock and acoustical ceilings and some of the interior components. So go to the next slide, Christy. So you got to get a general contractor to build this thing. And there's 3 different ways that I'm going to talk about today on how you would select or engage that general contractor. There's a design bid method. And in that delivery method, the architect and the consulting engineers like Will and DWG, they'll work with the developer for a long time, putting together a very detailed set of drawings, and then they'll send that set of drawings out to multiple general contractors and get competitive pricing. And in that scenario, the first time a lot of the general contractors ever see the drawings is when it's ready to be bid. So there's not much involvement. The next one is design assist, or CMAR, which is construction manager at risk. And that's what this particular project is. And in that method, the developer gets the general contractor involved very early. Like Christy said, we've been involved on this one for, oh man, probably 2.5 years. And so right when where the design was in its conceptual level, we got involved. And I'll talk a little bit more about the benefits of that, because there's a whole list of pre-construction services. Christy touched on it a little bit, but there's a lot of benefit to getting us involved earlier. And that's where we feel we can provide the best value to our clients and on a project, is when we get involved early and can help them guide the budget and look at constructability and build the schedule early and start planning the site early. The final method is design build. And in that method, the developer or owner is going to contract with one entity, and that entity is going to, like if it's a general contractor, they're going to hire the architect and the consulting engineers, and it'll just be one team working under one contract. Okay, so during pre-construction, there's a list of things that we do here, and I'm going to show you some sample forms that we use to do some of these things. But of course, the first thing you have to do is get the conceptual design and see where this thing is going to be where the budget's going to land on this, and make sure that it works for the developer. And once you kind of have a budget that he's comfortable with and we're working with, or he or she, of course, you're working alongside with the design team. And as they're coming out with new versions of the design, it's our job to take those drawings and dissect them and reprice them and make sure that the budget is staying in check. We also spend a considerable amount of time putting together a master schedule of the project to kind of help the developer understand, how long is this thing going to take to build? I mean, once I have the design components complete, have the final set of drawings, and I'm ready to say go, how long is it going to take you guys to make this happen? There's a lot of site planning that has to happen. It's particularly down on the CesarChavez project, because of the fact that the building it goes from property line to property line on the east and west side, and it goes out to the street, CesarChavez, and back to the alley. So there's a ton of planning that has to be done to, how are we going to get our deliveries in there? How are we going to get concrete trucks in there? Where are we going to send the trucks that need to take the excavated dirt out of the ground and get it out of there? So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We also look at those drawings from a constructability standpoint and say, how is this really buildable? And are we going to be able to make this happen? And so that's some of the feedback we're giving to the developer and the design team as we're going. If we get off track on the budget, sometimes we're providing alternative products and systems that'll maybe be a little bit more cost effective, or maybe sometimes it's just easier to build with this particular system, or it's going to save you time if you go this direction. Of course, we help with permitting, and also the final step in our pre-construction services is going out to multiple subcontractor trades, getting competitive bidding, and putting together our final guaranteed maximum price, which is done now. Actually, we're in process of doing that right now. Go ahead, Christy, to the next. This is just a sample of an estimate. I mean, and this is one page of probably 6 or 7 pages. And this is like, we're breaking down and pricing every component that is shown on those drawings. And then as we get new versions of the drawings, you'll see on the right-hand side, these columns that are blue and yellow. And each one of those, there's the price that we did when we first saw the conceptual design. And then as the design development got to 50%, we did another price exercise. And then as they completed the design development, we did another one. And we're able to look line by line where that budget is moving, especially if we've got a major discrepancy in where our pricing was before to where it is today. It's important for us to be able to pinpoint where the budget is moving. This is a sample of a project schedule that we put together on the 1515 project. The overall schedule contains 10 pages of activities. And so we list every activity it's going to take to put the building together, and then we link them all together with logic. And this becomes the living and breathing document that we build by. This is our project timeline. And as a general contractor, we're in charge of putting that together and making sure everybody's staying on track throughout the process. This is another picture of the site plan, and it's really hard to see, so I apologize for that. But the green bar across the top, that's a lane closure. We have to have that lane to pull concrete trucks through. Delivery trucks have to come through there. The haul trucks that are hauling out the dirt when we go to excavation, all of that, we have to have that. It's just something that we couldn't do the project without that. We've also got, on this particular project, we've got the alley closed down and a lane closed down on Comal Street. But all of this stuff, talking about rules, the city has a ton of rules on how they'll allow you to do your traffic control plan and how much you can shut down. And then you end up, once you've got an approved plan that's designed by a licensed traffic control engineer, you get to pay the fees on those lane closures, and it's per square foot per day. So it can get really expensive. It's amazing how much money a developer can pay just to shut down the lanes that they need to shut down in order to build the project. Okay, when we get to where we're ready to build, one of the first things we do is put a fence around the property, and let's get some perimeter control in place. And this SWPPP, that's stormwater pollution prevention measures like silt fencing and putting filters over the storm inlets and making sure that anything we're doing on our construction site isn't going to pollute the stormwater system for the city. On this project, in preparation of the main excavation and building construction, we started by getting all the utilities tie-ins cut in from most of those utility connection points are underneath CesarChavez or underneath Comal Street or underneath the alley. And so we decided to do all of that ahead of time, and it's going to be a huge benefit by taking it with that approach. Once we're ready and all of that stuff's complete and the developers effectively gotten all the people that were living in those buildings moved out, we go into demolition, and that's the last step of site preparation, just demolishing all of the existing buildings, the restaurant, the car wash, and any trees that are on the site. And then, then we dive into construction. There's some particularly unique things about this project that would be like the excavation. anytime you're digging, 3 levels underground or 2.5 levels, I think we're going down about 30 feet. It's a challenge. We've got concrete foundation. I'm not going to necessarily spend a lot of time here, but setting the tower crane, building the concrete structure, putting the exterior skin on the building, all of the stuff that Will discussed, all of our infrastructure, our mechanical and electrical and plumbing systems, we'll attack those kind of at the same time we're putting on the exterior skin. And then finally, we'll focus on finishing out the interior. And after me, you'll hear from DWG, because the final thing that we'll probably be focused on is the landscape and a lot of the exterior finishes. This project, as Christy mentioned, has a ton of outdoor space, and there's a beautiful design for what they're going to do with exterior planters and exterior pavers. The living wall is a huge component to this project. So the next slide, Christy, I think shows the mass excavation process. If you can see this, if you can imagine, you can't just start digging a hole and trust that that hole is going to hold together. It's going to start sloughing off and kind of caving in. So one of the team members that we, as the general contractor, had to get involved very early was the guys that do these engineered shoring wall systems. And these are just some pictures and diagrams of how that works. But essentially, you can't just take off digging and keep digging. You can only go down about 5 feet at a time. And then you have to go in, and this picture that's at the center, bottom center, they're going about 5 feet at a time. And after you dig down another 5 feet, you have to reinforce and blow the gunite cement onto the wall. And you keep doing that 5 feet at a time until the top right picture, you're going to end up with, an excavation that has a shored wall system, much like what you see in the top right picture. And in the bottom right, you're seeing these drilling rigs. And the drilling rigs are putting soil anchors. They're basically drilling these soil anchors back, and these anchors go down 80 to 120 feet, and they might extend underneath the street, where if they are under the street, you have to be very careful to thread that needle and not hit any utilities that are under the street. And then on the back side of this particular building, those anchors are going to be underneath someone's yard. So you have to actually go and get permission from each individual homeowner to anchor these anchors temporarily underneath their yard. But these anchors are structurally holding the soil back and allowing these walls to hold, basically to retain all of the perimeter soil. We are going to use a tower crane on this project. And this is another consideration here. You see the orange circle. That is the radius of the boom of the tower crane. And part of what we have to do is provide notification to every homeowner where that boom could fly across the top of their homes. Now, that homeowners and property owners do not own the airspace above their houses, but we're required to notify them. And we're also required to set safety limits anytime that we have a load swinging on that tower crane. The tower crane is getting every component of the building construction into place and moved around. It's essential to this project, but we'll have to set limits on that machine so that we are unable to swing anything that would swing out over the top of a house. Next slide. Finally, the skeleton of the building. This is a cast in place concrete structure. So I just thought I'd share some quick pictures of the process. What you're seeing here on the main picture is a matrix of shoring posts that are going to structurally hold up the concrete pour. The top left picture is, they've put metal decking on top of all of those I-beams and posts, and they're preparing to pour the concrete. And the bottom left picture actually shows kind of one level poured, and they're already shored up and working on the next level above there. That really is, in a nutshell, a lot of the key components that we work on the project. But you know, whenever the architect and the engineering team are done drawing their pretty pictures and playing on their computers, we get to put our tool belts on and, you know, pull out our hammers and start building. You know, our piece of the project is where the rubber hits the pavement. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, it's been such a blast to work with you so far on this, and you haven't even built anything for us yet. So I'm looking forward to it. Oh, Michael asked me to, before I bring Barbara on, to remind everyone that if you have questions, put them in the chat and we'll be able to answer them afterwards. So feel free to just pop things in the chat. I think Michael's going to keep an eye on it. And so, yeah, Kevin, stick around. I'm sure there'll be some cool questions. Coming up next, we have Barbara Venegas. She is a landscape designer at DWG. Her experience ranges from community design, resilient strategies, and landscape architecture. She is passionate about socially and ecologically responsible design when it comes to creating public spaces. And since she joined DWG in 2019, her projects range from mixed-use developments, commercial, multifamily, and ecological restoration. And Barbara, you've been awesome to work with on this project. I'm so grateful to have you. And you're up.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to be working with you guys as well, my favorite team. And I'm also really happy to be sharing this space with everybody tonight. And so from the landscape point, our scope really starts from the building facade out. So outdoor public space, patios, streetscape, plazas, and even in the alley here that we're seeing. And so two of the goals that we had for this project specifically was to display resilient strategies in landscape through the use of native planting and the water management. And our second goal, because there are so many residences surrounding our building, we wanted to really activate CesarChavez and make it a very friendly pedestrian street that would be open and very inviting to the community nearby. And so while working in this project and starting to look at the materials and working with Christy very closely to see what the interiors are going to look like, what the building facade is going to look like, really wanting to create like a holistic design and very unified. So how can we bring some of those warmer tones into the landscape, and how it's like carrying with the materials from like the planters and the hardscape, and how can we make also an addition with the planting to enhance all of this vision. And so really activating retail and making our project stand out, making it a little funky with the bright colors that we have here to highlight the entrances of the retail spaces, and just providing very different textures and colors as well. Next. And so we had a design shred where we came together with Christy's team and the architect of record, and we've just really put all our materials together, and we were trying to see like what looked together with each other, how we could enhance some of the really pretty Western cedar that Christy was displaying in the facade, and how could we make a little bit of contrast with the darker brick, and also providing pavers that would sort of bring out those like red speckles throughout of the project. Next. And so another piece was looking into planting. And this really just comes from also doing a lot of sun and shade studies in the building, trying to see which areas we can adapt the planting better. And so for the plaza planter, since it's on the north side, it was going to be a little bit shadier. So how could we make it really special and poppy with a lot of fussy planting with a little bit of pops of color to bring out those warm colors from the interiors as well. Next. And along CesarChavez, wanting to make it, again, displaying some red oaks for the trees and making the streetscape very fussy and soft for people who are gonna be walking by. This palette tends to be a little more muted, so it's not competing too much with the retail spaces. And so when everybody's walking by, we're providing a good atmosphere, but that it is also not competing. Next. And on the eastern side, because it is receiving a lot of the morning sunlight, we wanted to incorporate a little bit of different planting, providing a little bit more pops of color and plants that really enjoy a little bit of more sunlight in the morning. And also providing some vines that could start trickling up in the brick, so that we also extend our planting to the upper levels of the project. Next. And another thing that we also get to do is in the patios and in the retail spaces, we get to design furniture. So for example, how can we double use our planters to be creating another space for these patios? So in the plaza, this area is really about welcoming people and providing an outdoor space for everybody to sit in. So designing these planters to create an entrance, but also provide an area where people can sit, drink a coffee, maybe work outside for a little bit in the afternoon, take some calls. And here's just a look into the sections and the things that we look at. So drainage for the plants, which we work with MEP on. With this together, materiality, and also with the structural engineers, making sure that the weights of our planters work with the loads of the building as well, and we're not exceeding those limits. And so it's a really fun part of the project. We get to design and also work with Christy together as well, just to see that we're all in agreement with the design and what the kind of spaces that we want to provide. And I know that, next. And I know that at the beginning of the project, there was this talk of this really cool seep green wall that's 3 stories high. So this is really the behind the scenes of how we created this. And this was, we worked very closely with the MEP team, with Christy, with the irrigation consultants and civil, because we really wanted to bring this together and be able to provide different aspects of the project. So we started doing calculations on how much water we collect from AC condensate throughout the year and how much water planting tends to require in the summertime. So, tends to be the hottest and when we need it most. So the AC condensate, which is in pink, gets collected and travels down into this basin. And so the basin has a certain amount of gallons and volume that it needs to hold. And part of this is to be able to water our green wall. And through that, the green wall is really providing this beautiful atmosphere, schooling in the summer. And it's just, you get to hear the it's really trickling sound of water as you're walking up the stairs and like working outside, and having that water. And also part of this water that, so like the gallon, like this tank holds 2,000 gallons, and the excess we're actually going to be also using to irrigate our landscape. So really trying to maximize our, our sustainability, and working with MEP to see where these pumps need to go, and working with irrigation consultants, and they're working and sizing everything so that it works and connects. And in the end, saving money for the client and the bills for the summer months. And yeah, so this is kind of how this really creates like this really special place in the project, and how we all tend to work together and symbiotically with each other. And that's it.
Thank you, Barbara. Like I said earlier, I'm just in love with this sketch. It's just about moving, a diagram of like moving the water around on the site. And it's really fascinating how y'all came up with this whole concept.
Team effort.
So that's it, Michael.
There is a bunch of questions in here, and I'm going to jump around just a little bit because I saw one that I just feel like is important just for this particular conversation. And it said, how involved is the architect after construction begins? And I feel like this is for everyone, but who would they work more closely with during this time? So Christy, maybe if you can speak to that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We're all, the whole team is super involved during construction. Kevin will be sending us over submittals and questions. Every component that goes into this building gets a submittal. So you know, we specified a certain type of wood siding that you see in this image here. Kevin gets to put together a document and a sample to submit to the design team so that we can review it and make sure that that's exactly what we're looking for. And then he can release an order and begin the process that eventually puts that stuff up on the wall. It is every single component of this building goes through that process. It's all the information is in the construction drawings that your whole design team put together, everybody on that list, but we still have one more set of checks and balances. And then we're also meeting on site weekly to kind of verify conformance with our drawings, just making sure that the way things are built are in conformance with the way that we specified them. And certainly problems come up along the way. I mean, as perfect as our drawings are. And there's absolutely no mistakes in them, ever.
Never.
Ever. But if one were to kind of slip in, we address it as a whole team. And so, yeah, I think we're all there.
I would just add that if we're going to get that 0 defects, what we'll end up wanting to do is, as a contractor, is we're going to identify some of the special finishes and do a mock-up, and then we'll involve the design team, whether it be, you know, the design architect, or it could potentially be the landscape architect, to take a look at, you know, for instance, that living wall. As we go up with it, we may mock up a first section of it and make sure everybody's happy with the way that the concrete looks and the forming looks, and so on and so forth. So that's another piece of involvement that you guys take, is we work together to make sure what we're about to do is meeting the quality expectations and meeting the intent of your design.
Yeah, I had one of the first guys that ever taught me. That's what he said. It's all about communication. All we do is like talk this entire process, and it never ends. Okay, I'm jumping back to the top here. And Will said that he could speak to this one. What's the difference between a structural engineer and an architectural engineer?
Yeah, so I would say architectural engineering is a broader version of a degree that applies to a lot of different areas in this industry. We actually hire quite a bit of architectural engineers at our firm. You know, I have a mechanical engineering degree, but I would say most are not that case, because especially like a program like UT's program, I'll just kind of mention them because they have a really good architectural engineering program. And during that program, you get to do a lot of what we're talking about here. They go through some projects in their senior design courses, and they learn about structural systems. They learn about MEP systems and architecture systems. So that kind of prepares you to go into any particular route. But a structural engineer is going to be very specific to, you know, the formwork and the framework of the project. So the concrete and the steel and the kind of Kevin was talking about, kind of the underground elements in terms of how do you build a below grade parking garage. So it's a little more specific, but I would say architecture gives you a more wider opportunities.
So just going from the top, what would you say to someone who's deciding whether architecture is the career for them? And why would you encourage them to pursue that?
I would say, have you considered landscape architecture? No, that's not true. I would say one of the biggest misconceptions I get all the time is, oh, you're an architect. I wanted to be an architect, but I'm just not good at math.
Yeah.
Math. Everyone thinks we're just all doing math over here. I mean, I like
doing
math. It doesn't come up a lot. That's why we have engineers. Will does all the math for us.
It's true.
It really is. It's kind of, it's an incredible amount of creativity. My favorite thing about architecture is just the teams and the level of people you're exposed to on a daily basis. No day is the same as the day before. You don't have to wear a pantsuit or heels. You know, you can wear jeans and Nikes because you're going to be on site. What's that?
Depends on your firm.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, that's true. Fair. But I can always just be like, no, I got to be on site later, whether that's true or not, you know. Yeah, it's intense, it's grueling, but it's immensely rewarding. I don't think I could have done anything else.
I mean, do you all remember that first building you worked on? This is for everybody. This is not in there, but you know, that you saw that first wall go up and you're just like, you know.
I hope I didn't screw it up.
It's really exciting.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, that too.
Straight, it's not leaning.
I saw a contractor building it and I was like, oh man, now it's real.
Yeah. I remember walking into that first building, just being like, wow, I can't believe this is real. I drew that.
Yep.
Let's see, I already did that one. Oh, how does your interior designer help with your planning process? If they do at all, how closely do interior designers and landscape architects collaborate?
Good question. We were the interior designer on this project so far. We're one of those kind of sweet spot firms where we don't just do architecture, we do interiors as well. But we actually, and normally I would say like, Barbara, I don't know, you'll have to speak to this. Do you deal with a lot of interior designers? Because normally that building boundary is like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's project specific. There's some projects that, you know, whether it is the client or the architect, that they really want more of a interior exterior relationship and the materials really connecting and just kind of having that sway of back and forth within light and fresh air. And there's some other projects that we sometimes don't even know what the interiors look like. So it really depends. But for this one, it's really special because of, you know, like the building side is very breathable. There's a lot of outdoor space in between the buildings. So I think that connection is very important.
What do you do if residents do not want to cooperate and get permission to do things like anchoring on their property?
Oh, you start cutting checks.
Pull out the briefcase of money. Literally, I mean, so on this particular project, there were I think there was one or two of the neighbors that did not want to grant permission, and most of them, after a monetary offer was made, agreed to allow us to go ahead and anchor onto their property. But for the one or two that wouldn't, we actually had to change the structural design of the shoring wall for the excavation, and we abandoned those anchors that would extend underneath their property, and we went to a different method for structurally holding that wall up. More expensive, unfortunately, for the developer.
This says, let's see. Let me just do this one fast, and then I have one kind of for everyone. It says, is this image computer generated? If so, what program was used? That's a good quick one.
Yeah, the renderings that you see on that website, and then I think, let me see, I'll send the website out to everyone so that y'all can visit it. This was done, we did renderings early on in the process, and they were fantastic. But the actual owner of the building got a company to do a really robust rendering package with the 360 views where you could kind of walk through the building. I have no idea what program they used. The whole building was modeled in Revit. They took that Revit model and plugged it into their programming. For us, we use programs like Inkscape. We still do a lot of design modeling in SketchUp. But Revit is definitely our kind of production machine. And then we would plug into a program like Inkscape, obviously Photoshop on top of that, just to give it those nice final finishing touches.
All right, there's two more on here. And I'm going to do this one and then one for everyone. This one says, are there any specific requirements for designing a building and incorporating features? That's a hard question. I mean, yes, depends on the feature.
In the codes, like the various building codes, and then we have some guidelines for, to design the portions that we do. So there's the city has its own requirements, depending on where you're building in the city too. So there's always kind of overlap. It just depends on what you're doing.
It is making me think of the fact that, Barbara, we couldn't call our seep wall, that 3-story planted wall, we could not call it a water feature. because as soon as you call it that, it's basically a fountain. And in Austin, it's subjected to drought restrictions, which is why when it doesn't rain for a while in Austin, you'll notice like all the fountains in town are turned off, which is great. But we're using reclaimed water and on and on and on. So we tried to avoid, I'm not sure if that's what this question is about, but that's one instance where we made sure not to have a water feature on the site.
All right, well, this one's for everybody. What has been your most exciting project? Who wants to go first?
This one.
Ah. This is why APTUS is our favorite engineer.
I personally like really anything that makes a difference in the community. So one of the cool parts about what we do is we get to work with firms like Christy's all throughout Austin. And it's cool to be able to feel like you're making a difference in what's going on. So whether that's like a restaurant or even an office building like this can present some pretty unique elements that are pretty interesting. So, I just like doing a wide berth of different stuff and being able to see people use it and to go enjoy it myself once it's built.
What about you, Margaret?
Oh man, yeah, I really agree with what Will said. It's so special when you're able, we work on the outdoor spaces, so it's really nice when we're able to provide that amenity in areas that typically wouldn't have somewhere. If we can add it to, like a building, so it's nice that people can have outdoor space to enjoy and relax as well. This project specifically, like the seep wall, it's really exciting. I'm really hoping that it turns out as beautifully as we've all imagined it. But yeah, and I really just like the amenities too, that it's, like opening up to the neighborhood as well with the outdoor space.
Kevin or Christy?
Yeah, Kevin, what's yours?
Okay.
Besides this one.
Well, for me, when I think about some of my favorite projects, I think about the relationships, that came out of those projects and the lifelong friendships that you have. And so there's so many different projects that I think about. Also, I guess, because I love a challenge, some of my favorite projects have been these ultra challenging semiconductor industry clean rooms. You have to work around the clock and do a massive amount of work in a very short period of time. One in particular that I was involved in was in Colorado Springs for Intel. And we built their new fab we call it the Garden of the Gods fab for Intel, where they make computer chips, and it had to be done extremely fast. And so you can imagine you have a bunch of people that are forced to work around the clock together in a high stress environment. You forge a lot of bonds and friendships through those processes.
Sounds like studio.
Yeah.
Maybe when you go to architecture school, you'll learn about.
Sounds like college. My favorite projects are always restaurants. I mean, obviously this one has been so cool, cooler than your average office building for sure. But I grew up waiting tables and bartending. Restaurant people are my people. And anytime I get to work with them as a client, a lot of them are like entrepreneurs, this is like what they dreamed of doing. Plus you get to go back and like visit them, you get to have a cocktail there and like, you don't usually get to do that when you design someone's house. They might call the cops on you or something. So I like restaurants.
A couple of things just came in. Can anyone speak to how the disciplines are contracted with each other? Like who gets who?
Yeah.
Who gets whom? Right.
Yeah. This one was pretty simple. A lot of times architects will hold the contracts for all of their consultants, not counting construction. We never hold a construction contract, obviously. That's way too much money. But for consultants, a lot of architecture firms will hold the contract. Clients like that because they pay the consultants through us, and we are ultimately a little more tied to their contracts. So for that exact reason, we don't do it. We don't hold our consultants' contracts. As a general rule, we'll make exceptions, but we require that our owner holds all the contracts and pays everybody directly.
Oh, you guys ready for this one?
Uh-oh.
What is the most underrated part of your job? Ooh, everybody.
I think Kevin really tapped into something earlier, talking about just relationships. You really don't, even when you leave school and even early like interning, you really don't, it's hard to kind of understand the depth of relationships and teams that you were about to enter into. I mean, and here's the other thing, that list that you saw, which isn't even encompassing everybody that's worked on the project up to this point, we're about to kick off a whole new list. Like Kevin says, he self-performs concrete and drywall, but which means he does that, like his company performs that, but he's about to hire on dozens of subcontractors, and we're going to start relationships with all of those subcontractors in some way. I mean, it is extensive. It is an extensive network to just accomplish one project, of like a medium-sized project like this. Mm-hmm. So that to me that's been my favorite part, is the relationships.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think, and if you don't like the people you're working with in our industry, just hold on, because your next project's coming soon.
That's true. That's a good way to put that.
And you know, I think Christy, it was Christy that you touched on, just the fact that there's a tangible product when you finish, that you can like be proud of for the rest of your life, and you can bring your kids and your grandkids and show them, hey, you see that building right there? I was on that project. We built that project. And so that's, I think, one of the most rewarding things about what we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've taken my daughter to things, and she's like, hey, mommy, is that your building? Yeah, it's my building.
It is nice. It's a nice reminder too, because these projects go on for years, and sometimes it's hard to see the finish line, but it's a really good reminder.
Well,
good questions.
Yeah. Well, I think that's everything. Any last comments you guys would like? Or Joe, is there anything else I need to touch on that I'm missing?
I got one directly to me asking how much this project cost.
Oh, sorry about that. I think anyone want to touch on that?
Different components. So I could tell you how much the construction is about to cost, which is about 24 million.
Yeah, which that doesn't include all the stuff that happened up until Kevin got the go ahead.
That doesn't include all of the consulting fees for all the design firms. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't include the purchase of all of the land and the compiling of all of the land and all of the entitlement fees.
Permits.
They had to pay for to get the project going. So, and I don't even want to guess.
Not cheap.
No. I feel like, especially in Austin, Austin's definitely not a cheap place to build.
Yeah, it's true. City doesn't make it easy.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I just want to say thank you to all our presenters. That's a great project. I really can't wait to ride my bike by there someday. And it's actually kind of close to where I live, so I get to actually see it go up too. So that'll be really fun. But thanks everybody for all of the questions too. Like I said, we'll be doing a little raffle of everybody that asked. And yeah, so we can get out of here just a little bit early. But yeah, thanks for everybody who attended right on a Tuesday for this fun rescheduled one. And then yeah, lastly, just also huge thanks to our presenters for taking the time. That was an amazing presentation. And yes, this will be posted online, so we'll also be sharing it and giving y'all shout outs on social media and everything like that. So
awesome. Thank y'all.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks everybody. Have a great night.
You too.